So there's a new mode in Roblox A Desrt that is the most difficult but only experimental, called Steep Terrain. To find the Steep Terrain mode, go to Create Lobby, then scroll down from Room Settings and you will find Steep Terrain. We can see that there is a Steep Terrain mode under Sandbox. Check it to activate Steep Terrain. Okay, I'll activate both Sandbox and Steep Terrain modes because I'm using Sandbox mode so I can spawn vehicles easily, and I'll start the game with Steep Terrain mode. So on the left, there is a somewhat uneven downhill slope, and I will look to the right and see that there is an uphill slope with a very extreme height. Okay, I'll test the Steep Terrain mode. Near the starter house, there is a downhill road that is uneven. I'm using a Lada engine and default tires because this car is a starter car. The downhill is very steep, but only for a short distance. After the downhill, the road becomes flat, but only temporarily. Soon an extreme uphill will approach. Okay, here comes the extreme uphill slope, but the car will start to slow down due to gravity. Yes, the car's speed will start to decrease from 100 km per hour on a flat road before reaching an uphill slope to 40 km per hour. So I use manual or semi-manual gears because I can change gears when the uphill slope appears, then I shift down so that the acceleration is smooth. Okay, I've reached almost the top of a very extreme uphill slope, but the car can still go at 20 km per hour and is starting to slide a little in first gear. I'm using a Lada engine, but miraculously, this car can still move on extreme uphill slopes, although the height isn't really that extreme because the Lada can still move. We can see the speedometer, and it turns out that the needle is shaking because the car is struggling to reach the extreme uphill slope. Okay, just a little more. We've reached the top of the extreme uphill slope, and the speed is starting to increase as the downhill begins. The car has stopped struggling and started going downhill to speed up, but the downhill slope is very steep and you have to be careful because it will be difficult to brake at high speeds. You shouldn't shift to the highest gear, which is third or fourth gear, but stay in first or second gear to be safe. And this is what happens if you shift gears 3 and 4, and the brakes will be difficult to stop on a very extreme downhill slope. Okay, so I'm using a V8 engine. Can a V8 engine handle extreme uphill climbs? I'm going to try climbing an extreme uphill slope using a car with a V8 engine. So I've already descended from a very extreme downhill slope, but the most difficult part is when the car gets stuck on a rocky surface. However, from an extreme downhill slope, the car will start moving fast after you push it. Don't forget to pull the handbrake before getting out of the car. But unfortunately, when you get ragdolled and thrown out of the car from a crashed rocky surface, the car will start moving fast from the extreme downhill slope, and you can't take the car back, but it takes a long time to get the car. Okay, so the car will start to slip because I'm using default tires. That's why these default tires have a torn texture, and the car slips easily when using a powerful engine, namely a V8. So I replaced the tires with excellent and very useful white tires, because they have great grip, preventing the car from slipping easily when using a powerful engine. And I will test the V8 engine against extreme uphill terrain to see if it can reach the top. Okay, here comes the extreme uphill. But this is different from the previous extreme uphill, where I used the Lada engine. However, the height is much more extreme compared to the previous uphill I drove. Okay, the car will start to struggle, but its speed will start to decrease to 40 km per hour on the extreme uphill slope. However, I have a bad feeling that the extreme uphill slope will start to get even steeper. Okay, here it is. The uphill road will start to get very steep, but the V8 engine will have a hard time climbing it. It turns out there is a damaged road that is not connected, I used first gear, but unfortunately, I couldn't reach the top of the extremely steep uphill road because the road was damaged and almost disconnected, and there were holes in it. Even with perfect equipment, such as a V8 engine and white wheels, it turns out to be impossible to reach the top of the extremely steep uphill slope. This step terrain generation mode is very difficult and almost impossible, because this terrain will generate extremely steep hills once the game has started and driving has begun. Alright, that's it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like the video, comment, and see you next time.